once that situation is over, back to being a pet. Because, again, it's not who they are, it's what they do. You know, and the things that made them great at what they do are the things that make them be able to turn it off. So comparing the dogs that do it, comparing the people that do it to the, again, not necessarily trying to rag on anybody, but the theory behind and the guiding principle behind uh, what exists outside of the Japanese style. Um, it's just two very different worlds. And again, to be sure, there are people, for instance, in China, who are breeding Tosas and pits together, and they call it a toe pit. Um, and they fight differently. They fight more like what you'd see outside of Japan and certain parts of Korea and Vietnam. Um, but as far as what is considered the traditional Tosa way, um, if you talk to Japanese dogmen, they don't regard the Western dogfighting style as legitimate. Some of them can see the sport in dogfighting in general, and as an academic student of the sport, they'll learn about it, but they don't see it as legitimate or as the best. And they don't see the dogs it produces as the best. And much the same, I know of no quicker way to flame on all the keyboard warriors outside of Japan than by saying that um, the Tosa is a great fighting dog. In the sense that, and what I'm trying to illustrate is that they're all considered dog fighting people, but fundamentally and in every way, they do not see themselves as the same. They do not agree on much at all. Um, and when you look at, um, you ask a Western dog man, what's the biggest problem with the Japanese Tosa? And they'll tell you it's because the Japanese Tosa is not bred to be game. They're not game enough. They're not allowed to fight to the death. Females aren't allowed to fight. The rules that they have don't even really allow the dogs to get hurt. And if you look at a contrast of how the point of Western dog fighting is fighting to the death to see what they do in the death, versus the Japanese point, um, I feel comfortable saying that my research bears out a statement that I read by the Japanese dogfighting organization, um, when they were last in public practice, uh, probably within the last decade, where they said that no Tosa in the history of uh, organized dogfighting in Japan has ever died in the ring, ever. And again, that's one of those things that should let you know these things are not the same. They're not intended to be the same, and therefore, um, if I need to go to work and I have a job I need to do, say driving in a nail, and I get a rock that falls apart. Well, the rock was great. It was good shape. It had good weight, but it wasn't a hard enough material. It fell apart and broke apart. Well, I'm going to try a different material, and I'm going to keep on revising it. But it's work centric. I need to drive this nail in, and I'm going to keep on revising that hammer. I'm going to make um, designs to its handle to where it feels more comfortable so I can use it for long periods of time. And that's how we got these hammers, all these different hammers that we see to this day. We got sledgehammers, we've got regular hammers, we've got framing hammers, mallets, peen things where it's like whatever, buckshot in the hammer. All these different designs. And it wasn't because somebody was walking out in a field someday and was like, oh, hey, look, there's a hammer. Let me see what I can do with it. It was because the work came first. It designed and guided the process that created this hammer. And I think that when we look at the Tosa compared to so many other breeds that are used for that same purpose, Um, I think that the creature it creates is something that could not be considered the same um, any more than you might consider a talented uh, a talented street fighter. I know I'm going to step on some toes with this, but a talented street fighter compared to Mike Tyson. There's so much scene and pride around that character that is in the breed, and the time and devotion they took into creating an actual breed. They bred a dog with thick skin. I mean, inordinately thick skin. You can put a Tosa in the ring with any other dog, and they will end up with ripped skin. But a Tosa will not. The only dog that I know of that can puncture a Tosa's skin is another Tosa. And again, to me, this is somebody who took the time to actually design a dog that was made to do this, as opposed to, hey, this dog is tough. Hey, that dog is tough. Let's get them together. And they may be great, you know. But again, if you're looking at it, you have dogs with really thin skin going at it. Of course, there's going to be a lot of injuries. Of course, there's going to be a lot of blood. Of course, there's going to be a lot of carnage in that regard. And if the point is carnage, then that's why it hasn't been changed. But if the point over here is just the sport and it's not about the carnage, then that explains why they emphasize that thicker skin, that controlling bite, and a Tosa has more than one bite. They have a wrestling bite. It is a absolutely firm and controlling grip, assertive grip, but it is constant. It is a pressure bite that is about control. It's not about trying to kill the other dog per se. And then they have a serious bite that you'll find when they are legitimately threatened that is something else entirely. And I can, Tosas don't bite and shake most of the time because they don't have to. They just bite through, you know, and and it's one of those things again that it just it shows the forethought and the commitment to the sport, the purity of that sport. Regardless as to how I feel about it, speaking objectively, the commitment to that sport that went into creating these dogs. Um, and it just, again, it, I think, is a different level from the average dog fighting dog that most people just, hey, I feel like this dog shows promise. I feel like this breed shows promise. Perhaps we breed it more for dog fighting, but again, you're not actually taking into account what it takes to be good at it, what it takes to survive it, and to be able to do it again, what it takes to be able to be functional in that regard, and not just a dog that can only show value in the ring as it's dying, but also a dog that you can take out in the neighborhood, a dog that you can go places with and people wouldn't have the slightest idea that that dog was used for dog fighting, you know. Um, just because, again, the things that are in the ring that make them good in the ring are the things that make them so good outside of the ring, you know. So um, that would be how I'd answer the question of the differences between West and East, particularly when it comes to what you see in Japan, and why um, I do think it's a valid statement to say it is not like anything you'll see elsewhere. So, in just about every country that the TOSA is accepted, you'll find a registry that will accept them. Um, that said, there are some countries, for instance, like some of my associates in Canada, they let me know that the TOSA is not banned in Canada, at least not largely. But the Canadian Kennel Club doesn't recognize it as a breed. Um, and then, you'll find in certain countries where they are banned, again, they're not recognized as a breed. So um, countries like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, And recently, it been brought to my attention that the Tosa was banned in those countries, even though they never actually did anything in those countries. And I was looking into it, and it's just one of those things. The UK made a law that banned Tosas before Tosas ever even had a chance to do anything wrong in that country. Um, Same thing, to the best of my knowledge, with Australia. And the more that I'm looking into so many of these countries, they were banned because people saw fighting dog and they presumed on that and they banned it. When in actuality, there are things that Tosas can do that your best trained police dog, the best trained police dogs that I've worked with, um, would not be able to exhibit the same level of patience, given the circumstances. And it's one of those things that kind of guides that principle. So people in different countries, their experience with registering these dogs might be different. I've gotten dogs out of a few different countries. So the Japanese Kennel Club, as you stated.
Consider joining our Patreon community to access exclusive content, early releases, and personalized experiences. Subscribing not only supports Sean from the Bulldog Social Club, but also connects you with a community of like-minded enthusiasts. Whether you enjoy Sean's interviews, appreciate creative processes, or desire exclusive perks, your subscription plays a crucial role. Click the link, subscribe, and be a part of this journey with us.
The AKC recognizes them, but it's a bit of an odd situation in that the AKC is not intended to be a standalone organization any more than, I promised I wouldn't talk about controversial things, but just to use politics as an example, our government is not intended to be a standalone thing. It's a for the people, by the people thing. So people are elected from states and sent to serve in a governing body. But the government is not itself its own thing, if that makes any sense. It's made up
Mhm.
of representatives from each state. Even the president is selected from a state, and of the people. And in the same way, AKC is not considered does not consider itself anyway a standalone body. It is considered a we'll say a organization, a corporation made up of the breed clubs, the national breed clubs that comprise it and subscribe to it. So that in mind, when it comes to the Tosa, they're in this kind of odd position where they are a recognized breed in the foundation stock surface status, but they're not officially recognized. And my understanding and my experience, and again, feel free to fact check me on this, but even with the AKC representatives I've spoken to, I haven't gotten anything that contradicts this. Um, you can't register a TOSA with the AKC um, currently, because even though the breed would be registerable as FSS status, there is no TOSA Club of America recognized by the AKC as of yet to be able to um, administrate that acceptance and that process. So,
Do you enjoy listening to audio podcasts like I do? Consider joining the Bulldog Social Club Spotify membership. For a limited time, it's only $1.99. Get early releases and personalized experiences. Subscribing not only supports Sean from the Bulldog Social Club, but also connects you with a community of like-minded enthusiasts. Whether you enjoy Sean's interviews, appreciate creative processes, or desire exclusive perks, your subscription plays a crucial role. Click the link, subscribe, and be a part of this journey with us.
while the AKC recognizes the breed as foundation stock service, um, you're not really going to have the best experience trying to register your dog there.
Mhm.
The UKC does, the United Kennel Club here in America does register the TOSA and does recognize it as a breed. Fédération Cynologique Internationale, FCI, they recognize the breed. And then the organizations that they recognize, Again, FCI is kind of the same way as the AKC. They want to set themselves up as a corporation of the dog breed kennel clubs, or excuse me, the dog kennel clubs, national clubs of each country. So they'll have a single recognized kennel club in each country, which for America is the AKC. So having a UKC registered dog is not going to do you any good with the FCI. And the FCI is how you transfer a dog from AKC to the New Zealand Kennel Club, or excuse me, the Netherlands Kennel Club, or Romania. So we're kind of in a weird position here in the U.S. But outside of the U.S., particularly in certain parts of Europe, you'll find dog breed clubs, or dog clubs rather, and kennel clubs that will recognize the Tosa. So I've gotten dogs out of Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, um, and Japan, and all of these dogs had some form of documentation through a kennel club that was national. Um, that would be what I can say about that. I can also say that I'm working with a lot of people here to put together a national club for the Tosa Inu in North America, um, and we are making a lot of good headway. But that's something that I see is coming to full fruition in the next 3 to 5 years, probably. So, um, for those here in the U.S. wondering if they can AKC register their dogs, my understanding at this point and my experience at this point has been that um, if your dog is not registered with an AKC registered, therefore FCI registered registry, um, then they're not going to be accepted. And if they are registered with one of those registries, but they're not also already registered with lines that are already recognized by the AKC from that small window in 1997 when there was a breed club, um, then your dogs are not AKC registrable. And there needs to be a kennel club first, or excuse me, a breed club first. So that's what we're working on.
Right. Can you talk about the official standards from the Japanese Kennel Club?
I can. Historically, the Tosa has been kept a secret, one of the nation's best secrets, best kept secrets. I think that the way that the Japanese dogmen, going way, way back, and by that I mean hundreds of years, sought to protect the dogs was by a certain level of discretion. I wouldn't say full on secrecy because, again, the fights were something that would happen out in the open, and the matches would happen out in the open. But the dogs, their owners, um, even their pedigree and heritage and lineage was something that was protected as closely and carefully as you would expect Nabisco to protect the recipe for the Oreo, and for many of the same reasons. Um, so when it comes to um, the Western influence of wanting to create kennel clubs, which again, there's nothing wrong with that um, in itself. But when it comes to the Western influence of wanting to create kennel clubs and wanting to make breed standards, especially things that line up with the Western kennel club's idea of what a breed standard should be, um, I think a lot was rushed and pushed through, and that's where we got a lot of the misinformation and incorrect information. Instead of taking the time to develop relationships with actual dogmen, um, you can imagine somebody who maybe has seen a Tosa 2 or 3 times in life, even though they grew up in Japan, and they see a Tosa, and they, of course, know better than to go over and ask the person, "Hey, what breeds went into making these dogs?" You're not gonna get an answer for that. But what you can expect is they're best at conjecture. Instead of taking the time to develop that relationship, they kind of rushed through a standard. And, you get a lot of that misinformation about all these different dog breeds that were used. Hey, I saw a St. Bernard back in 1925 that was in so and so's kennel. I saw Gemma and Bricka, two Great Danes that were imported to this Tosa dog kennel in 1930, 1940, whatever year it was. Actually, it might have been in the teens, but in any case, I saw those dogs go into that kennel. I saw Tosas come out, so therefore, Great Danes must have been used. And when you're creating a breed standard, the best you can do is what you got in front of you. So a breed standard was made that took into account the breeds that were believed by these people to have been used in the creation of the Tosa. And from the inception of the Tosa in the Japanese Kennel Club, uh, and that would be, I'm going to mix up my dates, but since the inception of the Japanese Kennel Club and their bringing in of the Tosa has never been widely used at dog shows and with their kennel club. And I need to qualify that statement. A few things. First off, um, there have been some Tosas, but the ironic thing is that 9 times out of 10, when you're looking at a Tosa in a Japanese kennel club show, it's actually imported. And that's the funny part. Instead of being able to get a dog from a dog man in Korea or in Japan and taking that dog to a dog show and showing that dog with the permission and consent of the dog man, um, they'll actually import a dog from Europe, from certain lines that got dogs out of the U.S., and so on and so forth, and they'll show those dogs. So there is a stark divergence between what is considered a Tosa by the people that created it and what is considered a Tosa by the Japanese Kennel Club pedigree. And when you have a setup where the national club is the Japanese Kennel Club, and therefore the FCI recognizes the Japanese Kennel Club as the expert on the Tosa, and takes their standard and adopts it as their own. You can look at the standard from the JKC back when they first wrote it, the original standard, and it is verbatim nearly what the FCI has on file. And then if you look at a lot of the other kennel clubs from around the world that have adopted the FCI standard, because again, they assume that the FCI has the good news, the good information, and of course, why would they assume anything else? You have everybody putting out the same standard that does things like limits the breed to 4 colors. There's only 4 colors that the Tosa comes in. When in actuality, I've had people that I'm working with that are knowledgeable on the dogs, the Tosa. They've worked with people in different countries, and they themselves didn't know that the Tosa came in other colors, or they didn't know that the Tosa came in specific colors, and being able to show them, hey, it's not just hearsay. Here, this is a chocolate Tosa. Like a chocolate lab, this is a chocolate Tosa. This is a reverse brindle. This is a blue Tosa. This is a white Tosa. This is a vanilla Tosa, or a cream colored Tosa. This is a Tosa that's white with brown splotches, or even almost a tricolor. This is a Tosa that's black and rust. Being able to show them that is kind of a eye-opening thing. And it might seem like a small thing when you consider a breed standard, but what I see, I tend to be heavily analytical. It's part of the problem with why I can't seem to shut up half the time, regardless as to whether or not I'm right. but when I look at that, I see problems that got us to where we are, and problems that are going to get us to a very bad place in a very short amount of time. In that, if you look at a dog with so many different color possibilities, and you constrict it down to 4, right? Which prior to the last 10 years, it might have been 2 or 3 colors that they recognized. I think red was the only color that they recognized for the longest time. And if you look at dogs coming out of Europe, if you look at Tosas coming out of most kennels, red is the most common color. Black you'll find sometimes. You're not really going to find anything else. And it's a shame, because even though the registry recognizes black and rust, or not black and rust, but brindle and have to think of what the other color is. It's tough for me to remember because they seem to be just arbitrarily chosen. But brindle and there's one other color, but even those don't show up. If red is preferred in the breed standard, that's what people are going to breed for. And what you do genetically is therefore you say this black dog that is a perfect example of what a Tosa is and should be is therefore rendered worthless because it is not red. Um, the standard calls for white markings on the chest being a fault, the degree of the white marking being the degree of the fault. Whereas in Japan, and in the fighting ring, you can go back. You don't even have to look at dogs of today. You can go back to their inception, the modern iteration of the Tosa. They were a white dog properly. They were a largely white dog, and there were other colors. But like I said, that dog that showed up as the first black and rust, prior to that, they were white with brown patches. That was it. And for people to expect that has been bred out or does not exist, and therefore to breed away from it, you're just constantly constricting and concentrating the breed pool more and more and more, and limiting what you can work with, and eventually working down to the point where the Tosa is considered the same as, for instance, a Rottweiler. And if a Rottweiler has white on their chest, even though going back historically they could, it was seen as a fault in a breed circle. I mean, in a pedigree or in a standard. So they can't have white on their chest. It can be the perfect Rottweiler on the planet. It can be great working lines. It can be a great worker. It can produce extremely structurally sound and healthy dogs. But if it has white on the chest, nobody wants it. Versus in Japan, where they're not limited by that. And they breed a dog that works. If it can do the work, then it's great. And our standard, again, is something that it's just one of those things that they look at as not even an object of ridicule so much as it is a fundamental understanding that, first off, this was not based off of the true Tosa. Second off, it is not designed to create a true Tosa. Third off, therefore, the dogs that it produces are not to be regarded as Tosas. So that's where you get that fundamental differentiation in the mind and mindset of the average Japanese dog man versus what they see as a dog in Europe, in America, even my dogs. And it's funny because my dogs have historically been Japanese lines. They can trace back, or some dogs from direct imports like Yoshi. But as far as they're concerned, if the rules you raise that dog by are not the rules that make a Tosa, then it's not a Tosa, you know? So that tends to, I guess, illustrate that difference between the breed standard and what is actually considered a Tosa. And the funny thing is that if you talk to the average dog person, Tosa aficionado outside of Japan, and you put in front of them the best bred, pedigreed, documented blue blood Tosa out of the best kennel you can think of outside of Japan, and you put that puppy next to a puppy that is directly from Japan, and perhaps its parents were Yokozunas, or one of its dads was a Yokozuna. Its father was a Yokozuna. Sorry, they're going to pass on that purebred every time. They're going to pass on that blue blood every time. They're going to go for that Japanese dog time and time and time and time again. And it's one of those things that, to me, just further illustrates the point that the standard needs to change. It needs to be something that is more inclusive. If we can acknowledge the fact that the dogs from Japan are actually legitimate, then we should create a standard that recognizes them as such. If we can acknowledge the fact that the dogs from Japan are, or from Korea, are oftentimes healthier and genetically varied from their pedigree, if you will. Um, I think we need to create a standard that reflects that. So the standard that we're working on is one that, instead of just blueprinting a standard from another breed, is attempting to understand and operate based off of an understanding of other breed standards. So two examples would be the American Bulldog breed standard is written in such a way that it allows the variations between the Scott and Johnson type. You won't find that in most other breed standards, you know. And then the Collie breed standard will allow you to register a dog that will recognize a dog that can perform the work. Now, granted, they want a dog that has a certain look in the show, but if that dog performs in the herding ring and attains that title, it is a collie as far as they're concerned. Much the same as the German Shepherds, from what I understand traditionally in Germany. It's not a German Shepherd if it doesn't have a title. If it does have that title, then it's a German Shepherd. They don't care beyond that, aside from, yeah, looks aside, can it work? Does this look affect the work? If it affects the work negatively, then it's probably not going to be seen as valuable as the dog that is capable of doing the work all day. You know, so yeah, when creating the standard, and I know this is a huge undertaking, because if it was easy, it would have been done already. It would have been done by the first people that put together the breed club. Honestly, if organizing people behind the breed was easy, then it would have still been there, and I'd be free to just be Joe Blow from some country town in Texas that's outside playing with his Tosas, and doesn't have to get serious and grow up to a certain extent and advocate, be the most outspoken, be the person that's putting these breeds forward truthfully and in a proper light, you know. So that in mind, when it comes to creating a breed standard, I'm trying to learn from as much as I can out there, and the people that I have uh, in this huddle with me are people that I appreciate deeply in so many ways, um, having been uh, witness to, I think, the culture behind the breed in the past, and being able to be a part of the creation of the current culture behind the breed in the modern age today. Um, I can attribute that to, not to my own vision or me or anything like that, but the sheer character and quality of the people that are around us. And I feel like when it comes to attaining something huge, like making a breed standard that creates a consistent dog, but allows for the variation at the same time, creates a working dog, a dog capable of work, but also creates a dog that's not a wild animal, you know, um, creates a dog that's inclusive of people in their country of origin, and also is a dog that I remember talking to one, and it was when I was first getting to know him, and I was asking him what it would take to get one of his dogs, and he was saying it's ridiculously hard to get one of his dogs out of his country. You'd probably be better off getting a dog from somebody he's given dogs to. And I was telling him, no disregard to or disrespect to those programs and those kennels, but I want your dog. I want a dog from you. And he was saying he didn't really understand that. I understand why. And I asked him, and I put it this way: say something terrible happened, and your entire kennel was destroyed overnight. You went to sleep, you woke up, all your dogs were dead and gone, maybe stolen, whatever. And you had to start from scratch. Where would you get your dogs from? Would you go to those people that have your puppies? Would you go to somebody outside of Korea or Japan? Or what would you do? And instead of, saying, he just said, oh. And I was like, that right there, that's what I want. And I was like, Not only that, but if you want to know what my intent and my purpose is and where my heart is on this, I know that we're not fighting dogs here. We're not gonna. I don't think that's ever gonna be a thing. But I won't consider my work complete until the day when you can say, I'd take a dog out of the US. I I'd take a dog out of not just Pride Rock Kennels or Corey's dogs, because quite frankly, um, I will never be as good. I will never be better than the people that are around me. Um, so if I can't help to build up the people that are around me, yes, sure, I get great dogs in and can't really go anywhere with it. There's no levels with it, but that's because I didn't build up the people around me. I didn't build up the breed around me, you know. Um, but if all you can do is say, and that in mind, if all you can do is say, "Hey, I would take a dog from Corey," um, that's not enough for me. I want you to be able to say, "I'd take a dog from America." And he laughed and he was like, "That's a lot to say." And I'm like, "Now you get it. Now you get what I'm saying, and now you get what I'm after." And no, it's not small. I get that. If it was easy, I know a lot of people would have done it already. People have done it. They've tried and they failed. All kinds of reasons. But this breed deserves at least that. It's the bare minimum. Um, the dogs that I've had that have influenced me, shaped me as a trainer, shaped me as a dog man, shaped me as a human being. Um, they deserve that. They deserve at least that bare minimum. So when it comes to it, um, the standard, I think, should be a function of that, and that's what we're working to create. The people that I've been blessed to be able to work with, and it's one thing to say, before I leave anybody out, it's one thing to say that this is just people that are interested in working with Tosas, and it's not. Some of the best help I've gotten have been with people that has been from people that work with other breeds, but they know how to create a standard. They know how to put together a kennel club, or should I say rather a breed club. Um, and they've shared information. They've shared pitfalls. They've shared. I had another breed club shared with me their templates for every document they ever created as a breed club to help us get things going and get that going. And I just have to stop and say again, the way we've been blessed um, in so many ways, um, and have so many people realize this is bigger than just us, and we see it's bigger than just us, and we're not going to stop for that reason. I don't see how we can fail in that regard. So that would be what I would say about registration status as it stands and where it's headed. Um, again, probably a bit more than what you were asking, but there you
No,
go.
it's great. Great. So on your yard, when you're breeding, what do you think your ideal Tosa is? And we're talking height, weight, structure. Where do you want your program and what direction you want to go on that level?
Um, I would start by answering the question I feel like I get the most. Does size matter? Yes, I like big dogs. I'll get that out there and I'll be honest. But when it comes to it, is it what guides my program? No. And I don't think it should either, any more than what guides the program of the dogmen that I've learned from, and what guides their program um, in the countries of origin. Um, the things that I look for are structure. I want a dog that's structurally sound. We run our dogs. Um, that is my test. That's one of my tests. The work. Can you? I read back in the day that Tosas in Japan, working Tosas in Japan, are exercised, I think, a minimum of 12 miles a day. So I was like, all right, there we go. That's what we're gonna do with ours. So if you can't do the 12 miles, that's it. That's it. You'll be a great pet. And then 12 miles became 20, and then 20 miles became just a time limit, and it was okay. How long can I be out here exercising these dogs? 4 hours. Okay, bet. That's what we're gonna do. And if my dogs are showing that they can consistently put out that work, that's what's important to me, and everything else is a function of that. The structure needs to be something that makes them sound for what they were originally bred to do, which is stand and fight. And again, when I say what they were originally bred to do, I need to make sure to put in people's minds that I don't have in mind some vicious animal that's uncontrolled and attacking every dog in sight and is likely unreliable around human. I mean the Japanese way, in that their view of the Tosa is a dog that doesn't fight. It doesn't pick fights with little dogs. It doesn't fight with dogs that are unstable. It doesn't even recognize them as challengers. It's not something that, it's not a dog that's considered goofy as we might consider them, jumping around and stuff like that. Tosas in Japan don't jump on their owners. They're aloof, but the bond and the respect and the love that they have for their dogs and the love that their dogs have for them is something that is a bit more quiet, if that makes any sense, and a bit more reserved is not the word I'm looking for. Composed, if you will. And when it comes to it, that's the temperament. Those are the things that I first saw when I first got my Tosas. And those are the things that I consider the most important. Um, and that in mind, when getting back into the breed this year, I really thought that we were going to have to breed behind the scenes and work up to the dogs that we want. Um, but what I've been able to find out there, what we've been blessed to be able to put together, has been phenomenal. Kikyo, the female the first female that we got this year, she shares many of the same much of the same blood as our Mufasa, who was pretty much the prototype back in the day. He was 30 inches at the shoulder. He was 120 pounds, but he was lean. He was heavy boned, but he wasn't heavy moving, heavyweight. Like I said, that dog, there have been times where he jumped consecutive 6-foot fences. Pulling up that patio support beam was only the half of it. He's pulled up small trees, doing the same, just messing with him for resistance training. Same thing with Sumo from back in that day. He pulled down a chain link fence. It looked like a tree fell on it. And it's one of those things that, to me, just emphasizes the importance of the practical function of the dog. If they are structurally sound and of the right temperament, a 26-inch at the shoulder Tosa is the best dog you ever had. Quiet around the house, you'll forget that they were there. You go to play, they will play their butt off. But if somebody's dog get loose, or you run across a stray coyote, whatever it is, it doesn't matter if they're 26 inches, they're still a Tosa, and they will be a Tosa, in that anything that steps up to that plate will be met with a Tosa, so in that regard, I don't put an emphasis on size, but getting back into things, we've been blessed to get size. We've got blood, we've got size, we've got things that allow me to have my cake and eat it too. Dante is 33 inches at the shoulder, thereabout. 32 and a half is about right, is more accurate, but, or should I say rather the way I say it, but I think he's 33 and a half. I just undershoot. Same thing with Kikyo. She is, last I checked, 29 inches at the shoulder, which this would have been a few months ago. She turned 2, and she's still growing. You can look at her rear and see it's up in Tosa growth phases. The rear comes up, then the front end catches up. So for a little while, they look like a fila. And I think a lot of people look at the breed, they see the high rear on a 2-year-old dog, 3-year-old dog for a female, 4 or 5-year-old dog for a male, and they think that the dog just has a high rear, and they put that down. When in actuality, I would take a Snickers break and just kind of take a moment, follow that dog, and see where that ends up. Give it 6 months, give it a year, then check and make that decision, because generally speaking, when some dogs have a high rear, it just means they have a high rear. When a Tosa has a high rear, it means they're going through a growth spurt, especially if it's a young dog. The rear grows, then the front catches up. Then the rear grows, then the front catches up. So yeah, 29 inches with her rear starting to come up a little bit. I think she's going to be 30, which for a female Tosa, the average size is probably closer to 26, 27. 28 is considered a good sized female. The only females that I've known to be historically to be larger than 30 inches, there's been 2 in all my knowledge of the breed that are larger than 30 inches. And they were both, I think one was 31, one was 30. They were both in Europe. They're both long gone. So to have Kikyo coming out pushing 30, if she doesn't get it, she'll be close, is, in my opinion, record setting for a female, and absolutely wonderful to be able to build our program around that. But again, that said, when we're definitely holding back a puppy from this litter, I have to say that, and when I'm looking at the pups, I'm not looking at necessarily which one is the biggest or anything like that. I'm looking at temperament. I'm looking at which dog is already showing work ethic and drive, which dog is already doing that. And, my wife is like, couldn't we take one of the more laid back ones, but no, not the direction that we're trying to go, what we're trying to create. If somebody wants a relatively toned down Tosa, they can absolutely get that. But our program is breeding for a working dog, and I think that that's the best way to preserve the true nature and temperament. That's the best way to preserve the health. I've never had a single, like I've known people that have had Tosas that have had things like hip dysplasia, that have had things that have come up. I've never had a single dog in my own program that had any sort of major vet bill, ever, even once. And I have had dogs historically. Just full disclosure, I have had dogs that produced well, and then I had somebody come back and say, "Hey, this pup had joint problems," and then I look at that and use that to guide my decision on whether or not I breed with that dog again. But by and large, my program has incorporated inordinately healthy dogs and produced inordinately healthy dogs. But when it comes to the breed as a whole, I believe they're a healthy dog. I believe that a lot of the health problems that we see with the Tosa in certain regions are due to a constrictive standard that causes a lot of inbreeding, and then an insistence that the dog must not be a working dog. And if you, if I stop every bit of activity today and just kind of sit around the house, never leave my computer, um, we all know what's going to happen to me. And if I compound that by eating nothing but processed foods, again, we all know what's going to happen with me. And that's not genetics. My dad was a star football player. My mom did sports, ran track, was a lariat with the twirling batons and stuff like that. So genetically, I should be right. I should be fine. But I will absolutely probably die in short order if I live that lifestyle, and a very painful and complicated death too, you know. And I think that a lot of what I see with Tosas has proven to be more practical as opposed to genetic. And the dogs that I brought into my program um, sometimes were overweight, sometimes were lacking drive, but knowing two things. I know my own experience with Tosis, and I also know that uh, as much as we've illustrated the difference between Tosis outside of Japan and Tosis inside of Japan and Korea, um, dogs are still leaving those countries and being incorporated into people's lives. So they're not, even the Western Tosa is not far removed from a genetic standpoint, from a what lies underneath standpoint. And whenever I bring in a dog into our program, it's kind of like a boot camp. It's, I know what you are, I know what you got under there, and we're going to uncover it. And I've never had a single time where I brought in a dog to our program from some other program and I did not find exactly what I expected to find under there. Which is more than I can say for so many of the other dogs I've worked with. Um, so when breeding in my kennel for a working line, I just want to make sure that I'm not taking too much credit and saying, oh, we're the only ones with working Tosas, or we've got special bloodlines that are this, that, or the other thing. No, in the right hands, with somebody that knows what they're doing, you can go out and get a Tosa from just about anywhere. They're not so far separated that you can't make a Tosa a Tosa. Um, and that's honestly been the gift for my program, even coming back into it. Um, so, yeah, what we breed for here, what we prioritize is a working dog that you don't have to work. You can just make them a pet. You can live a pet lifestyle. You can go running and jogging and stuff like that, and Netflix and chill and all that fun stuff. Um, but if you want to work, that dog will put out a work ethic and a work capacity and level that you will find utterly astonishing. And I'd rather the potential be there whether or not it's used. So even wrestling with Dante the other day, um, he was just messing around. I was having him sit and wait at the gate to our property, and he's just super gung ho to get out and get down the road. I mean, he is ready to run. And if you can imagine, 140 pounds of mastiff jumping up in the air like a cat, and I mean goofy. That's it. Like if you spend 10 minutes hanging out with one of these dogs, you'll understand the power of their presence and the strength and potential in their structure and build. It's not a question of, oh, weak this, or oh, they can't do that, or this, that, or the other thing. If you spend a few minutes in a room with a Tosa that's at its top level in working shape, um, it'd be the farthest thing from your mind to feel like if you tick this dog off, you could run behind a 6-foot fence and be safe. It'd be the farthest thing from your mind to feel like you can attach a toy to the top of a stick and wave it in the air, some 7 feet in the air, and the dog can't get it. That kind of potential energy, that kind of experience with that power matched also with the strength of character that is unlike anything you'll ever see. That's what I want people to experience when they get a dog from us, and that's what I want. Not just people to experience when they get a dog from us, but also I want for the breed into the future. Um, they could be a pet, but they don't have to be. They could be a working dog, but they don't have to be. And in our program, I feel like that's what we've been able to produce up to this point. We have had dogs that we had to cut out of our program for different reasons. Um, but I feel like that has only given us the opportunity to be more focused on what it is we are about and after, if any of that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. I think I watched one of your videos before I decided I was going to contact you. Is you were talking about that you wanted to be able to hone in some of the energy that makes these dogs good combat dogs, prize fighting dogs, and that you were looking at trying to develop scenarios and to get that outlet, to give them that drive, to take care of that outlet. That way they're not losing the essence of who they are as a breed and what their original purpose was. But obviously, for legal and moral questions in the United States, they can't be used for what their original purpose is, and that you're trying to develop some of um, that drive into something else that's similar. And can you kind of touch a little bit on that? What you were meaning by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of this is, I would call it passion, but I could see how someone else might call it hubris to a certain extent. In that, the idea is that as a dog trainer and behavior therapist, I have a certain amount of insight into what shapes canine behavior. And being able to study and understand the intent and purpose of the over 250 rules that govern the Tosa in the ring in Japan, and how it affects the dog, how it created the dogs that we have, um, how to be able to engineer things that um, protect that true temperament, without having to resort to um, what they originally did. That is my goal, and that's what I'm working towards. I think having real conversations with people that have come before and tried it, and come before and reached the same impasse, has enlightened that effort a lot. Um, and I've had some very interesting conversations. I think that he feels that that's the only way to really be able to test their temperament and test their character. And to me, talking to him about this, I was telling him some of the alternatives I had in mind, like, for instance, protection work. And of course, that came up as one of the things that he thought about before. And he was saying that one of the biggest problems he has with it, is that it it's not serious enough. That the dogs are somehow understanding that this is kind of a sport. They're sleeve oriented, and they're not going to develop the true Tosa temperament that comes from the fire of facing something that takes your biggest, baddest punch and is still standing there wanting more, daring you to give it more. And it's not something you're going to beat in just a simple fight. You got to think, you got to work, you got to face it. And development of the character of the warrior, the challenger, the champion, is something that is valued. And to me, I see far too many similarities from a psychological perspective. The things that are being used, the tools and buttons that are being pressed to create what we have in the current Tosa can be used for so many different things. And I'll give you an example of that. Um, Whenever somebody is telling me that their dog is attacking people, I've got this kind of dog, that kind of dog, and my dog is attacking people. I need help. Make it stop. One of the first things I'll tell them is that aggression is not an issue. Aggression is the result of an issue. It's a tool that a dog is using to deal with whatever the problem is. Um, More often than not, it's a fear thing or an anxiety thing, frustration thing. A lot of people rush to say dominant. The true instances of dominant aggression are very, very rare. So when it comes to it, um, with that understanding that aggression is an effect, we can find it has many causes. You can have a scared dog that bites. You can have a protective guardian dog that bites. A lot of people think that they can tell the difference between the strength of a dog's bite and its character based on why it's biting. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I am yet to be convinced because, as I can tell you in my own experience, working as a professional dog trainer, I've had quite a few bites in my day. And I will tell you that a dog that wants to bite is going to bite in the sense that, regardless as to the reason why they're biting, maybe you reach for their food bowl, maybe they feel like they're protecting their owner, maybe they're just plumb scared. But a dog that's going to bite is going to bite in that regard. Um, so saying that you are uh, working towards reverse engineering um, a dog for a certain purpose or with a certain level of capacity and temperament um, is kind of built on that principle that essentially this is the effect. There are more than one way. There's more than one way to get to it. If I need a dog with a calm, cool temperament, I can create that. I can absolutely make that. I can absolutely cultivate it. I can absolutely keep it going. And I don't need certain methods in order to accomplish that. I can get a dog in shape without playing one game or doing one exercise. There's many ways to do that. We can swim, which we do. We can run, which we do. In the same way, temperamentally, if I need a dog that stays quiet in a fight, and all it is just the dog stays quiet, well, I'm not going to understand the reasoning behind that, and I'm probably not going to do that, right? And the people who outside of Japan are trying to, I think, fight their dogs to create that. Again, they don't understand the reasoning behind it, and therefore they're I think, misguided, and I agree to disagree with that. Um, but when it comes to understanding the original intent was because a quiet dog is a dog that is serious about action as far as they're concerned. A quiet dog is a dog that is still engaged in it, much like if you got time to talk when you're eating, it's probably not the best food. You know, if a guy sits down, you got a group of guys that are sitting down and they're eating and nobody's talking, it's some really good food. I want to make me a plate. But if they got time to talk, fuss, fight, talk about their day, I'll pass on the plate. I'll go pick something up afterward after the meeting, you know. And it's the same way if you are serious about what you're doing, um, they are quiet. The dogs are not bred to take steps back, which again, if you converse that to a hunting dog, which again, a lot of people try to put Tosas in thinking that that's the better way to make a Tosa's temperament because they have to fight something to the death. And this is being really candid. Um, to me, I disagree. Again, if you look at the ring, no dog in the Tosa history um, has been allowed to fight to the death. It's not a thing. It's not what their goal is. And further, when it comes to it, if you're fighting a wild boar, if you're fighting, a lot of people will compare them to dogos and Tosa versus a cougar. If you're fighting a cougar, your average dog is going to take steps back. They're going to maneuver. They're going to do all kinds of stuff. Even going to the pit bull. I've seen pit bulls dodge hits from animals in ways that are astonishing. I mean, just lightning quick moves and good on them. But it would be immediate disqualification for a Tosa in the ring in the sense that, yes, you can dodge, you can parry, but you don't take steps back. You don't walk away. You don't go backwards. A dog that takes 3 steps backwards is a dog that is disqualified. And again, if you think that they're just training the dog to not take 3 steps backwards and you don't understand, this is a function of their mindset. It's a test. It's not a rule per se. It's a test to see the dog's mentality. Are they engaged in this? Are they committed to this? If Tosa makes a noise, they have words for these. Seri is one. If they make noise, when they first start fight, they have a certain window where they're allowed to make certain noises, but that noise is not to exceed the amount of noise that you'd hear from water boiling in a pot. That's the way it's described to me. And it's again because they want a dog that's present-minded, that's engaged, that's thinking, that's doing. It's not about barking. It's not about growling. They look at these dogs that are reputed to be vicious outside of the Tosa, that are frothing at the mouth and stuff like that, and they get that that's a function of the dog's purpose, but it's not a serious animal. It's an animal that's designed to make a show, as far as they're concerned, but it's not a serious animal. And in the same way, I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. If you're talking about a dominant dog, a lot of people think that just because their dog growls at the food bowl, they think that they have a dominant dog. And that's not the case. You have a dog that might be dominating, but they are not necessarily a dominant dog. And probably the best example I would give of this is at that food bowl. If you got a dog that's hovering over the food bowl, growling and showing his hackles raised and all that other kind of stuff and trying to possess the food bowl, you don't have a dominant dog. And you also don't have a dog that believes that he himself is dominant. He does not. The dominant dog is going to stop his food, stop eating, because he needs to address you. He's going to, instead of worrying about possessing, it's his. He's not trying to possess it. He's going to address you in your mindset that says, you think you have a right to come over here. So the dominant dog is the dog that stops eating and goes and fights you, much like a female with her puppies doesn't necessarily wait for people or dogs, other dogs, to come over and get in trouble with one of her puppies. She's set up a boundary, an area already where she's denning. And it doesn't matter if there's a puppy at that boundary of that den area or not. If you're in that den area, you might be 15 feet away from the puppy. But if you're in that den area, you better belong there. Otherwise, mom's getting up. She's not going to growl over her puppies and all that other kind of stuff. She's getting up and coming to get you. And she's going to let you know you are not welcome here. Even if you have a female that's sitting there and growling at another dog, it's because she's got her puppies. She doesn't want to disturb them. But if you press her, she will get up, and you don't want to see her hand where her hip be at, as far as the saying goes, So again, when we're thinking about a dominant dog, if you look at the rules and the way that they design those matches, they had a very, very, I think, ahead of their time, innate understanding of what builds character in a dog, and they created a sport and a rule system that creates and cultivates that and evaluates that. So when I look at it, I can say, instead of, okay, this is just a rule, I can look at it and say, okay, this is what this rule does. This is how it affects the dog behaviorally. This is how and what it's more likely to create in a dog, and how that bears out with my experience of the Tosas that I've met here in our kennel and abroad, that I've seen and heard described from those that have worked with them in their country of origin and abroad, these things bear out. So, for instance, if we're talking about physically speaking, Tosas in the fighting ring have to be able to recover in a minute and a half. They have to be able to deal with this fight. And if you've ever been in a wrestling match, that is a lot of energy being used. It's not like jogging. You will wear yourself out in a fight really quick. And these dogs have to be in this match again, dealing with something that's as big as bad and as bad as they are, that's taking their hits and coming back for more. And they have to do that for an extended period of time. They're allowed to pause to take a breath. They're not allowed to step away. They're not allowed to walk away or back up or run away. They're allowed to pause and catch their breath. And you'll see Tosa's bodies heaving for 45 seconds. And then they're right at it again for another 10 minutes, another bit of time. If you look at other breeds that are used for fighting, take your Volkodavs and your Russian breeds, for instance, they get a full reset. So what'll happen is they'll have the dogs, they'll get into their fight or whatever, and the dogs get tired, and then they'll pull the dogs apart and they'll go to their own corners or their own areas. They'll get a 25 to 30-minute rest, full reset, full recovery, and then they'll come back and go for another round. Whereas the Tosa has to be able to do it in a minute and a half. Otherwise, that's it. And if they go extended periods, or should I say rather multiple instances of not being able to recover, then they're going to be deemed lacking lungs and they're not going to be bred. So when I'm looking for what I'm looking for physically in my kennel, I'm taking things like that into account. I need a dog that can perform physically, that has the lungs to be able to keep up with sustained high level exercise and energy output. Otherwise, I'm breeding away from what the breed truly is. Temperament wise, while I disagree with dog fighting categorically, again, I respect what it created. And I can absolutely respect the idea of a dog that can do, the saying goes, right, can do what other dogs do, but can also whoop them if needed, and I do think that there is a place and a purpose for that. Yeah, depredation out here in the country. I've had a couple coyotes that paused and thought about it, but then a Tosa showed up and then they decided they'd rather do other things, Yeah, that's true. But to say that that's the only place and time for a Tosa, no. Like I said, I grew up in inner city Houston. And the first thing that got me started on Tosas in the first place was the fact that I wanted a breed that could represent itself. I knew that the people that were in our neighborhood at the time were fighting dogs. And I didn't want to come outside one day and find one of the fence slats was missing. And God forbid their dog got into my backyard and killed my lab. Or their dog got loose and killed one of my dogs while I was walking it down the street. Growing up in that reality and knowing that, I thought it wisest to pick a dog that could defend themselves. So that in mind, getting Tosas, not only did I not have to worry about other dogs doing anything to us, but they were a dog that wasn't a liability. They were actually asset. I could take them places with us. They weren't a dog that I had to put away when company came over. They weren't a dog that I couldn't introduce to strangers, but they were also a dog that people knew better. We had problems with people breaking into stealing stuff from our backyard. Bikes went missing. We had a couple of lawnmowers and lawn equipment went missing. And then we got Tosas and all that stopped miraculously. The things that make them great in the ring. This isn't just a dog that loses control and goes for anything. When you're if you are ever finding yourself on the wrong end of a Tosa, you're finding yourself on the end of a a war genius, if you will, somebody who's thinking steps ahead, somebody who is outthinking you, and not necessarily because they're just so much smarter than humans or anything. No, it's because you have in your mind a base understanding of what a dog is capable of as far as their intelligence level. And that base understanding, even if it's based off of the smartest dog you ever met, is not sufficient. You're underestimating a Tosa. And he's going to make you see that every time. Every time. He's going to be where you thought you were going to be before you knew you were going to get there. He's there. He's waiting for you and wondering why it took you so long. You know, he's just unmatched in that. You know, so when it comes to it, having a dog with thick skin, having a dog that can take a hit and keep coming back, you know, like what's it, Rocky says, it's how hard you can get hit and keep coming back and keep getting up. Having a dog with that sort of mindset absolutely has its functions, and it can be just about anywhere. And in that regard, I would say just about anybody can have a Tosa. I wouldn't say everybody at all. I wouldn't say most people at all. But to limit it to a small group of people that have a very specific purpose for the dog, no, not at all. Um, I would say that anybody who takes the time to learn how to raise a dog properly and work with a dog, not a breed. If you know how to work with a dog, you know how to work with a Tosa. It's the things you have to unlearn. And if you can put aside the hype, put aside the propaganda, put aside what you heard in the media and the sales pitches that people give you, and just be with the dog that's in front of you, work with the dog that's in front of you, I guarantee you, you will find that you run out of ideas to test that dog on before they run out of the capacity to do it. And again, just looking at what I'm looking for in my program and what we aim to create, that's something I think is something worth fighting for and preserving. And um, things that um, if I could say, if I could say, um, if I could say, truly being a fan of the Tosa, being able to say, I don't like this way these traits were created, but I do like these traits. I do respect the way, I mean, the fact that that was the way that brought us what we have today, opened our eyes to what is possible, even with what a Mastiff can do. Being able to say that, and then also being to say, I commit to being able to create those things without having to use that. I commit to I can make a dog that has exercise and endurance as their primary focus. I can make a dog that if understanding that the seriousness of the temperament and the self-restraint and character of the temperament is what makes the dogs not vicious, not growly, not bitey. That's why they're quiet. They're not just quiet like a Basenji. It's a function of their temperament. Understanding that, well, okay, I can make a working dog program, a bite work program, a protection work program in which the dogs don't bark. And quite frankly, I might prefer it that way anyway. I don't need, the bad guy to know where the dog is. I don't need that per se. And I'm never going to be far enough away from my dog that I need them to bark and alert me to their presence or where they are to help find them. So I can teach a dog to work bite work quietly. I can have that work as a function of their character and develop that function of their temperament and absolutely incorporate those things into other sports, things that I think have far fewer, if any, um, um, ethical question marks. That said, I would be remiss. This is kind of off topic, but I would be remiss to not mention that the people outside see certain endeavors outside of dogfighting. People outside of Japan see certain endeavors outside of dogfighting as insufficient, whereas people in Japan, in Korea, see endeavors outside of dogfighting as non sequitur, and that distinction being being key, I think, and important. And in saying that, I believe I can create a sport or a means by which to develop true character without having to do that sport. I understand that I'm kind of stepping on people's work. Not just any people, but the people that created this breed, the people that are still working this breed to this day in Japan. I don't mean disrespect, but I see a future in which um, Western ideals are exported to Japan. I feel like it's already happening in a lot of large ways, and dogfighting will come to its end. Um, if the only thing Tosas can do is dogfight, they will go extinct, absolutely, in their country of origin. And what's outside of their country of origin is going to be at best watered down, probably bred in a different direction. Um, so the future for the breed will be best, I think, preserved if we can meet those two.